Cannabis Business Minds, we train and mentor professionals, entrepreneurs, and aspiring entrepreneurs on how to confidently find their place in the legal cannabis and hemp industries. Come on and join us at cannabisbusinessminds.com.
Hey there.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I am so good. I'm ready to get schooled. I'm like, this is like one of the most coolest subjects ever. And I just, especially like hearing it from a woman in this space, I feel like it's even more powerful. So I'm very excited.
Awesome.
Yes. I've never actually pronounced your company. And so
it's like once, twice, thrice.
Oh, thrice.
Yep. Super easy. We can talk about it if you want a little bit, but the three is really kind of Web3. We're sort of trying to bring in the Web3 element. And we kind of think of things to know, places to go, products to buy as the three things that we're sharing with our community. And so we came up with thrice as just a little nod to the future.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, it makes total sense. So, Liz, I really appreciate you responding to the DM on LinkedIn because this, the subjects that you are building a business around and that you are defining your expertise around are things that I think a lot of us want to know more about, but it's kind of those still a little bit out in the ethers. And I'm so happy you joined the podcast because I really want you to give us the lowdown about Web 3.0 and Cannabis 2.0 and the intersection of those. And really, I'm just excited to get a little bit of the behind the scenes of what it is. So thank you so much for joining the show.
Well, Simone, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me. And, I love that your sort of broader mission of helping companies get profitable, thinking through new ways to go to market and the like. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Well, those listeners who've not done the YouTube research or really even understand what Web 3.0 is, can you give us the 101 version?
Absolutely. And, our thing here at Thrice is to think about Web3 as a tool, not something you really need to understand, right? We are here to talk about cannabis and how it can help you in a better lifestyle, but we see Web3 as a tool that can help do some interesting new things to reach consumers, give consumers some interesting access. And so I always start by saying, you don't have to understand Web3 in order to use it. No one really understands how the internet works, and we use it every day. We drive our cars, we turn on our TVs, but if you were really pressed to tell me how any of those work, you'd be like, I'm not totally sure, but I use it every day. And so I don't want people to be intimidated. And when I explain Web3 to people, I start with Web 1. So what was Web 1? Web 1 was when magazines took basically a copy of their magazine and loaded it up online so we could read it. It wasn't really anything different other than a way to get the information. I couldn't comment. I couldn't really do anything. I could just read it on like a digital reader. Then we started getting into Web 2, and we think of companies like Facebook, now Meta, and Twitter, and YouTube, where I was starting to create this content, or I could respond to a story. And so in the beginning, it was read, but then it's read write. Like I'm actually writing, or then, of course, later making videos and podcasting and all this other content development. But if you think about it, a lot of that content is really still controlled by Google or Facebook or, Twitter or whatever platform you are on. So you're reading and writing, but you don't really own that content yourself. And all this data about you is owned by these companies, and they monetize it in all kinds of ways, which we know. So we had read, then we had read, write, and Web3 is all about read, write, own. I have this asset that's mine and I can do what I want with it. And that's really the promise of Web3. And then there's all these things around it, like the evolution of the internet. Some people call the metaverse the 3D internet. It's not exactly right, but it's a good enough analogy to think about where we're going from. We had dial-up and it took a half an hour to download a video, to now we make live stream videos and post them, right? And so what's the next evolution? This concept of the metaverse. But if you think of Web3 as just a lot more independent ownership, and that's where things like DeFi or decentralized finance come in, and NFTs and the like. So read, write, own.
Okay, that's really very, very helpful. And I like it. It's just like adding this additional block. And it seems like we're at this point right now where there's a ton of entrepreneurs in the informational age that are making money selling informational products, selling their knowledge, selling essentially things that they've created, as well as artists. I think that's the beauty of what the web has brought us to. And do you believe that the push with Web3 is to really is fully the ownership of it and being able to, for me, I get fed up a little bit of knowing that just to use a certain platform that I have to sign away on the terms and conditions that are way too long for me to ever read, and I know what they're doing. Do you think that really was the point for Web 3.0 and the evolution there, or what was?
Yeah, I mean, I think the original start was, the Bitcoin white paper that came out that was like, okay, we want to have a completely decentralized form of money that's not controlled by banks or governments or things like that. So the original idea is this: why do we have to be beholden to these third-party institutions? And this concept of a digital currency that is 24/7, that any two entities or people can exchange in a trustless way, which means trustless means you don't actually need to have a third party to ensure the trust of a transaction. Like, you don't need an escrow agent. So, and you could see exactly where money A was going to money B, that kind of thing. The idea was, we want more independence. We want to be in control. Now, there's a lot of good reasons to have third-party institutions. It makes life run much more simply. And I don't think we want to live in a 100% decentralized world. But if you think about a particular use case, of something that's like a piece of art, right? So an artist makes a piece of art, sells that piece of art for $100. 50 years later, they're a massively famous artist and their art's trading for tens of millions of dollars. And they have no way to continue to monetize that down the road. So people were thinking, well, how can we do something to not only show authenticity of a piece of art, but potentially continue to reward an artist throughout the life cycle of that piece of art, rather than just giving them the first sale. And when you think about Spotify or big platforms with music, it takes thousands and thousands of plays for an artist to get the return that they would get if they just sold sort of a token that said, okay, you get this song, and if you sell this song, I can get a royalty on that. So that was where some of the additional technology came in, to think about, what can we own ourselves? And then there's the really obvious stuff like, why should I carry around a piece of plastic with a photo on it in my wallet, proving that this is my driver's license, when they're very easy to copy? I mean, those of us who had fake IDs in college can remember they weren't that difficult at the time. You can imagine a digital asset that's issued by a government, that you can just prove that it's you, and you can pull it up at any time and anywhere. And some things like that are still not so decentralized, but have a function in the technology to make life easier.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's like so powerful. I'm going through this right now with my daughter because I'm an American and she was born in France and now we're in Portugal and I need to get her, she's our French passport, but she
Yep.
needs her American, and just the bureaucracy of being in a different country now than she was born and the embassies and thinking, oh, well, it's only going to last for 5 years, and realizing, yeah, that is it would be a huge, light, like fast forward so fast if we can get to that point of even just identification. So what I'm understanding is that the potential here, it's massive. And I think what's so fascinating for me, coming from the background of finance and coming from the background of control and regulation, I think what's so hard for me to break free of, but what's also so satisfying, is the systemic bureaucracy that I think we've all lived in, and we've always believed like this is how it's supposed to be, and allowing myself and my mind to kind of break free of that, of what it could look like. For you, when you got into this space, was it easy to envision what it could look like in a different way?
The short answer is no, it wasn't easy to envision anything. But, my background has always been in emerging technology from the perspective of how will that, affect regular everyday people? How will we use it? So, I'm old enough that I was at AOL in the You've Got Mail days when we got CD-ROMs inside magazines, sent to our house. Right. And we loaded them up and we had to listen to that terrible dial-up sound and all that. And, I was thinking at the time, e-commerce was such an obvious opportunity that, we started out, 2000 years ago, meeting at, on going across the Silk Road and meeting at oases and trading goods. Right. And then we had a lot of little shops. And then we thought about a mall. Well, a big kind of gathering place in each major location makes more sense, right? And then it was like, okay, well, this is the next evolution of the internet. Of shopping, right? E-commerce. And there are all these companies. No one's ever going to buy a pair of jeans on the internet, right? It is like, well, those days have certainly changed, right? So I saw blockchain and crypto, as the next evolution. Like, how is this going to change the way we do business every day? I don't really need to understand the back end technology, but what's it going to do for people's shopping? How are we going to think about things like driver's licenses differently? Because we have this technology now. And so I started thinking about that. And after 25 years in, Internet 2.0 or Web 2.0, I thought, well, let's take a look at what's happening here. And NFTs and all of that weren't even really something I was aware of yet, right? As those have come out, that's become a way to do marketing and branding and build community and do all of these things that strong brands want to do. At the same time, cannabis was making its way from California east, right?
Yeah.
And New York, I mean, there's a massive sort of illicit cannabis market here, right? That's non-licensed market, billions of dollars. It's a huge opportunity. And I look at cannabis and I say, okay, this is also a giant disruptor. This is a category it's a product category that is like an entire revolution for consumer packaged goods, because you have drinks, you have creams, you have, face creams, you have things for, pharmaceutical medicine, you've got health and wellness benefits. It's really disrupting across many, many, many categories. So I looked at both of these things. I thought, okay, there's got to be something here between these two huge revolutions to bring them together. But what that's going to be, I'm not really sure yet. And so that's when I started really investigating it. And then I thought about, well, hey, what if we thought about using this new technology in cannabis as a way to connect brands and consumers and educate people? And that was really kind of how Thrice was born with, things to know, places to go, products to buy in this emerging cannabis as CPG or cannabis 2.0. And we can use a little Web 3.0 to do it.
Oh, I love that. And well, I think what's interesting about just this evolution of Thrice is that education is everything. I think that being able to have that platform and see, and I'm curious about what kind of insight you can give us of like, how do those things actually marry right now? And what is that union like right now? But education to me is the most important thing, because I just think about, okay, yes, we are all in the cannabis industry. Yes, 98% of Americans are in favor of medical or adult use. Yes, that's so true. Yet there are still people in prison for this. Like the thought of it actually being federally legal still is a little bit far away. And so realizing that we're just at the very beginning, really still of this industry, even though it's been around for such a long time. And education to me is the tipping point. So like getting the mainstream consumer really using it, being very interested and not just being supportive of legalization. So question for you, how are you doing this at Thrice? Like what are you working on?
So what we're trying to do is you've hit the nail on the head, right? There's all this general support, but there's still a pretty big stigma around cannabis use, right? We can all, go skiing for the day and then have a beer afterwards and take a photo and post that to Instagram and everyone likes it. Glad you had a great day on the slopes, right? But if we had cannabis in that photo, people would be like, oh, I don't know, these are drug users. It's a different attitude. Fortunately, younger people are having that attitude less and less, but it's still there. And so what we find is that people are intimidated to go ask questions, right? Because they're not really sure what's behind the dispensary door, right? Like, especially in the East, where in some places you can't even have a window, right? It looks like you're either going into some kind of a warehouse or a strip club, like there's very little signage. You don't really know. It's like, what is this place, right? So there's a lot of hurdles to overcome. And a lot of the branding and imagery that you see right now online, if you can see it at all, because there are so many restrictions, you can't really advertise, but you can do lifestyle things, is very much stoner bro culture, right? There's a lot of people smoking and chilling out and partying, or you've got, sort of at one end, you've got the tie-dye stoner dude in his mom's basement. At the other end, you've got the super hip partying, with a DJ, right? But this everyday usage of cannabis as a kind of replacement for pharmaceuticals or as a way to just chill out and relax, like you would have a glass of wine or a beer, that imagery really isn't out there. And so what we're trying to do is show people that everyday people are cannabis users. And we are releasing a collection of NFTs, non-fungible tokens, that the pictures look like everyday regular people. And I'll share a video with you that you can share with your community so they can get a sense of this. But instead of something that looks kind of like a Bored Ape and Snoop Dogg came together and had a baby and strapped a bong on their face, we're like, how about somebody that looks like a nurse or a doctor or a professor or a yoga instructor, or someone who just looks like you or me or someone else who's enjoying cannabis without it being this hugely stigmatized thing. So what we're saying to people is, you want to learn some more? You're already coming to me and my co-founder, Polly, with questions. We're just going to put information out there. We're going to bring experts in, and we're only using the token, the NFT, as think of it as a modern day membership card, right? Instead of the little fob you have to go to the gym, you have a little NFT and it's a picture and it looks like a regular person. And it opens up opportunities for you to have different conversations, to try different products, to meet other people who are curious like you without you having to, post it to the whole world that you're some big stoner. And so
Wow.
we're just making it easy for people. And with NFTs, you can this thing called token gating. Like you can say, like, if you have an NFT in your wallet, it will unlock, this space, and there's all these interesting people or deals or discounts or whatever in that space, right? So we're using the technology a little bit, but really what it is, hey, I'm in this club. I'm showing people I'm in this club. And if like our art might have a little cannabis leaf where a normal logo would be on a polo shirt, but there's no giant bong. There's nobody smoking a big, fat doobie, or it's very subtle, because we want people to feel like, hey, we can come here, we can ask questions, we can learn, we can try new things, and we don't have to worry about what other people might think just yet.
Absolutely. And then is this the community that's on, is this like the combining both of these, intersecting industries and revolutions? So is this community only virtual, or is it something that there is this live component to as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think any strong community is going to exist in the real world as well as in the virtual world, right? And I think the kind of cool thing about, quote unquote, the metaverse, and there isn't just one, there's like tons of different places you can go these days that feel like sort of three-dimensional places, is you can be there with other people who normally you couldn't be together with. So if all your college roommates live in 5 different cities, you could go to this one place and all be together and feel like you're in the same room, right? But what I think is really more likely to happen is there'll be online events, and I'm not even talking about putting on a headset or anything. It could be Twitter Spaces. It could be a podcast like this, right? There's ways to connect. I call it Web 2.5, that sort of the cannabis companies are not shut down as much. There's a little more freedom to do things, but you don't have to put on an Oculus and go into a metaverse, right? I mean, you can, but we're not forcing people to do that. But I think what will happen is you're going to meet other people like you, and then those people are also going to want to be together in real life. And what we want to do is bring together events. For example, we could say, hey, everyone in our community, this weekend in 2 cities, in Chicago and in New York, we're throwing an infused dinner. Come learn what it's like to cook with cannabis, right? And if you're a member of our community, the ticket is $50, but if you're not a member, it's $150. And invite people to actually interact in person with each other, because I think that's what's going to make a virtual community that much stronger, is the ties that people can make. Now, some people will never have a chance to meet each other because they're on the opposite side of the world or whatever it is. So we'll have that opportunity as well. But for us, it's not so much about live this digital life. It's use this tool when it's appropriate to use it, and get together for real life events when it's appropriate to do that.
I love it. What's your big vision of, when you started Thrice, you had an idea, you probably had this, hopefully, tell us, what was that big vision when you started it? And is that the same today? And what is that?
Well, so I said, the ultimate big, vision is really, normalize cannabis, right? Why should it be any different than any other consumer product out there? Let's make this something normal, right? And how we get there it could change quite a bit, right? But that was kind of the North Star. The combination of these 2 industries, the idea that, cannabis companies have a really hard time reaching consumers. The primary way that a brand talks to a consumer is through the bud tender at the dispensary level, right? there's not a lot of advertising. You can't be on TV. You can't really advertise on most social media channels. You can't, even in certain states, you can't even put up a billboard, right? So there's a lot of friction to communicate with consumers. And there's a lot of friction for consumers to get the information that they're looking for. So we thought, well, let's use this emerging digital platform that is not as restrictive, because it's more of a you have this token and it opens up a free area, like free as in not restricted area, for people to gather, right? And then we can help brands talk directly to consumers, bring in experts, answer questions. And we would be this conduit to reaching the consumers that they're trying to reach. And that was really our goal, is like educate people, give them access to professionals, give them access to products. And when NFTs were kind of all the rage, and how can we use them, and how, we were like, all right, this is a new technology. Let's see if we could do it and become kind of the leaders in this space of cannabis, of a new way to do marketing and new way to do consumer engagement. And for people, a new way to get the information that they're trying to find, and that's so difficult for them to find online. So that was kind of the big idea. And now the execution is, all over the place as the industry evolves and changes, and even tokens themselves, the protocols, the capabilities of a token have all really evolved over the last 6 to 8 months. So, what we're able to do, those pieces will be changing, but the bigger vision has really still, stayed on track.
And what's interesting is, like, because this industry is so big, because there are so many different customer segments or consumer segments or even patient segments, and each of those is a different avatar that would have a different outreach strategy, that I think probably a lot of those brands don't even realize. Well, I think some of the bigger brands obviously do realize. I imagine that's a lot of work, because you are doing the work for the brands, but you're still facing, and I guess maybe this is where, like you said, Web 3.0 and the NFT and all of that are allowing you to reach more people. Because I think that's just the hardest part. Like I had this revelation yesterday. I was like, people somehow find my website based off of a few landing pages that I wrote. And I guess it's really good SEO, but any cannabis brand can't really rank in the keywords. They can't run ads. They're so limited on what you can do. And I find that now this is where I'm just like, I'm so curious, is like, imagine whatever customer segment you are targeting, but how do you actually go and do the outreach? This is why I've always believed it's all about community engagement and education, and partnering with the yoga studios, if that's where your people are at, or music festivals, if that's where your people are at. So they have that indirect awareness of what you're doing. Can you share a bit about the outreach strategy of actually getting people to find out about Thrice?
Yeah, so it's a great point. It's and the whole brands can't really do the SEO and run the ads and things of that nature. You're absolutely right. And so for us, what we're really thinking about is the everyday people. Mm-hmm. Our whole thing is that cannabis users look like everyone, right? So what we're doing is we can go to people that are doing cooking, yoga, travel, all those categories, just like you were saying, and say, what is the cannabis opportunity in this category, right? So inviting some friends to an infused dinner is like, wow, they had no idea that there was cannabis olive oil, and that you would be able to like enhance your food and not be passing out by, the first course, right? So sometimes the outreach is through those kinds of events, and just bringing people in, and then word of mouth, right? Ultimately, if you could build a brand through people sharing, that's why we started a newsletter. We have a newsletter, comes out every Thursday. We cover one of these, products to try or places to go or things to know. We make it really short and sweet and something that's like, oh, I didn't know that. And then, they share it with a friend, that kind of thing, right? It's very much personal at that level. But we can also go to the NFT technology Web3 community, which lives more on Twitter, for example, and say, hey, we're using our NFT as a membership card in this category. Come learn it. We don't have to teach you about Web3. You already know what it is. You already are collecting NFTs, but maybe this category of cannabis as, live better, love better, feel feel smarter, all those things can relate to you in your crazy, busy tech life, right? So we can go to that category more online, the Web3 people, talk to them about the use case and get them interested from there. So while, 80 or 90% of what we're doing is always about the cannabis, the 10% that's around the technology and how we can leverage it, we can use that to go to those groups as well. And there are a lot of online, you can share allow lists to do all these sort of Web3 techie things that the, everyday user isn't really paying attention to yet, but we can talk to that community through those tools. And they've really evolved and become pretty much free to use over the last 6 months, which has helped quite a bit.
Oh, wow. Well, and I didn't even realize, so you aren't on Instagram and you are on Twitter. And I had met somebody heavily involved in blockchain and crypto. And they're like, yeah, but everything is on Twitter. I was like, oh God, I have a Twitter account. I haven't used it since I created it back in 2015. And so talk to us a little bit about, why do you not have an Instagram and this community that is on Twitter as it relates to cannabis, as it relates to Web 3.0, and I guess all things kind of decentralized?
So it's interesting because we were just thinking about, we had gone originally onto Instagram, and Instagram's a really visual medium. And we were like, okay, we're going to have to generate content every day ourselves and create that content and try to talk about cannabis without getting shut down and, all of these things. And so, but then we realized that so much of our brand is around our imagery of our NFTs. And again, I'll share this video so people can get a sense of what they look like, but you can also now see a little bit of what they look like if you go to the website thrice.io, thrice with a 3. But the point is that now that we have our art and it's generative art, it's really interesting, the computer kind of, I call it like digital Mr. Potato Head, right? It picks all these traits and it combines them and you get this amazing outcome. Now that we have that, we're going to rethink our Instagram and how we can use our art and everyday people to drive excitement on Instagram in a way that it won't feel like we're going to get shut down so much from the cannabis side of things.
Okay, because I didn't know if it was more of a data reason, but that makes sense from a strategic standpoint where you're like, oh, okay, we don't have anything visual, but now that you do, and that makes sense going in. I thought it was more of just because of Web 2.0 and
no, not at all. I mean, look, I think you have to meet customers you have to meet people where they're at, right? And most of the world is still on Instagram and the younger world is all on TikTok. Right. So then it's like, okay, got to do Instagram, but you got to do TikTok if you really want to talk to the next generation. I mean, they are growing, hundreds of percent, month over month over month. They're just growing like crazy. And Instagram and Facebook's going the other direction. Instagram's somewhere in the middle. So there's always going to be another platform. But I think for us, we had to figure out like, what's the right way to present our brand on these platforms? And now that we've got our art together, we'll be able to do more of that and reach people on those channels. Whereas on Twitter, it's obviously people share images and whatnot, but it's a fast moving, you're commenting on things, you're in a bunch of different, you're in the Web3 world, you're in the cannabis world, you're talking about things. And we're doing Twitter Spaces, which is the Twitter version of kind of a podcast, right? Where people can ask questions, but it's behind an avatar, right? They can have their Thrice avatar up once they're out there, or they're just their little Twitter pictures up there, and they can raise their hand and ask a question, or they can just listen in. And it's kind of a low barrier way to start conversations. And so that's kind of where we began using Twitter, but now we will start thinking about these other channels and how we can really engage our art in these other channels.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And especially, I don't know how big your marketing team is, but, being so strategic, I think, on social and realizing like, what are your goals? Because there's the brand awareness goal, there's customer acquisition, there's, sales as well, which is, I guess, part of customer acquisition. So I'm very excited to watch, because for me, Instagram has been something that the only time I've really shown up as myself underneath a brand is when I would be able to really generate engagement and generate, I guess, a bigger following. But whenever I just would post something that was maybe a cool quote, or I let my, assistant kind of do it, we just never found the results that we were looking for. And I think that you being involved in showing the art and showing what, and really explaining, there's like, because what's so cool about what you can do on Instagram or on TikTok or anything, I guess, that's a little bit more visual, is that you can slice and dice a lot of the digital experiences with the in-person experiences, with the art, with education. So there's this, the entertainment, the educational component. And I have a feeling, I mean, we still see a ton of cannabis brands. So I don't know how people are getting away with not use, because it's crazy. Like, I even did like a cannabis hashtag search recently. I was like, still, it's gone. I can't find it. Right. But like you said, well, you're actually probably targeting people that aren't maybe searching hashtag cannabis. Maybe they're searching for something else. And that's the secret sauce for that acquisition strategy.
Exactly. And I think this showing up as yourself, I mean, this is exactly our whole, cannabis users look like everyone, right? It's like, show up as yourself. And, hey, I take this because I don't want to use Adderall anymore, or I take this because I got off Ambien, or I use this to chill out on Friday night so that Saturday morning I'm not hungover when I want to get up and go on a 10-mile hike, or whatever it is, right? And those things can be hashtag wellness, hashtag live better. Exactly. Hashtag mental health. It doesn't have to be hashtag cannabis or marijuana or Mary Jane or any of the other 50 million terms that people use, right? Yeah. So I think that's super important. And showing up as yourself is also, I think, why TikTok is really blown up, right? Because it's much less of a curated, beautiful, here's me at my best. It's like, here's me as I walk my dog, so I think that is also a medium. Now they're really strict on cannabis. Like, you can't show really to different things, but it's I think our strategy has been to focus where we are in the company and where the consumer is in the world. Is like, start with a newsletter, right? This is really easy for people to just get it in their inbox and read it. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to be intimidated in any which way. So that's like an easy place to start. And then, we've put out 20 different topics. We'll also cover things like the elections coming up, and 6 states are on the ballot, right? So make it easy so that people can just really quickly be like, oh, if these pass, 50% of the states will be legal. That's cool. They don't need to know all the ins and outs. And was this, a vote, or was this done by the legislature? Like, there's way too much info for most people. Exactly. So we just try to make it super simple, break it down, give them the nugget that they need to know to live their normal life and move on.
I love it. I love it. All right. As we're wrapping up, I want to ask you just a few questions about, where do you want to be? We always think about setting goals. We know the big vision, but thinking about your business in 12 months, what is that? What would you like to see it as?
I want people to think of us as their trusted friend in cannabis. Like that's our goal as Thrice. We're your trusted friend in cannabis. We're not saying we're the experts. We don't know everything, but a friend is someone you go to and you say, I have a question about this. And your friend is like, oh, I know that answer, or I don't know that answer, but I know someone who does, right? And that's how we want people to think of Thrice, as their trusted friend in cannabis, for people that are just, they're kind of curious. They're kind of confused. Cannabis is now coming to their part of the world, whether it's New York or Massachusetts or, in the South or wherever, right? Like they're going to the first time to a dispensary. We want, in 12 months to be like, you know what? I'm going to go to Thrice to get that answer. That's how we think of ourselves. And we want to encourage all different brands. We want to show people that there's a lot of different products out there they may not even be aware of, right? Like most people who think about their cannabis use, say in college, or like, oh, they smoked a joint or they had a pot brownie. That's like the extent of it, right? They have no idea that there are, microdose cannabis beverages or some CBD face cream that's going to, help your skin, or something called drops that look like, nicely colored Tylenol that can, make you feel tired, but also make you feel alert, depending on which one you're taking, right? So we want to be that place, the trusted place that people go, and that they can feel comfortable being here, and that they don't have to live a particular sort of stigmatized lifestyle. They don't have to be a stoner bro or a super hip, sort of hip hop artist. They could just be themselves.
I love that. As you started this business, what has been one of the biggest challenges that you faced, but that you've also been able to overcome, and walk us through how you did that?
Well, I think the biggest challenge that we face and that we're still facing is we're trying to combine two pretty difficult industries, right? So I kind of joke that, the crypto Web3 industry right now, they call it crypto winter, it's having some challenges. And then the cannabis industry, like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, is pretty much the way it goes in cannabis, with laws and regulations and all these different things. So I kind of joke that we've got these 2 negatives, and hopefully we'll bring it together and make it a positive. But, the good news is, because things are changing all the time, the opportunities, like if you go down one path and it's like, oh, that path's kind of closed, like maybe people aren't reselling their NFTs for all this money, and maybe that's not a revenue stream that is going to work for a project. But now now NFTs have this new functionality, and we can do something different with them that opens up a whole different revenue stream, right? So for us, because we're in these very changing industries, we have to be able to adapt all the time and figure out. The one thing we have figured out is that our art, our presence, our introduction to the market is resonating with people. And this idea of everyday people, that isn't going away. People don't want to be the next Bored Ape. They want to be themselves in this particular category, right? So, like I see Bored Ape showing up on M&Ms, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, why is this a good idea? But if you think of your avatar, your NFT, as something that reflects you, and that it's functional for you, that is something where I think we've hit the chord a little bit ahead of some other projects and people. Everybody's trying to like chase the Bored Ape thing, and we're going in the entirely other direction, right? So even though the industry's changing and We have to like zig and zag every other day. That part we nailed, right? And so we're very proud of that. And the response to the art and to our bigger vision of like cannabis as wellness and lifestyle and live better and your trusted friend, all of that is really resonating. And so that's quite rewarding, even if like the business models and the technology and all of that is changing, we still have our North Star.
Yes. Well, the North Star guides you, right? And I think that, as you said, like, just if you just think about it, it's that educational component, and that the everyday person doesn't know all the stuff that's going on in cannabis. And if they're curious, and you can be that person that or that entity that they're reaching out to, or that group, that is where I think, yeah, it makes sense, because you can zig and zag, but people are still coming and you're still right on track with your mission.
Exactly.
As business owners in cannabis and startup environment, like, we have to have our eye on the prize, but we also have to have systems that work for us, systems that make what we're doing easy. For you, what is your go-to business system or tool that you can share with the community?
I just asked my co-founder to do it. No, I'm just kidding. So, but I have an amazing co-founder in Polly Lieberman, and she comes from a technology and cannabis background as well. We both have many, many more years in tech, and we've spent the last 4 or 5 years in cannabis. And so, honestly, the systems that we are using right now are this is going to sound crazy, but if you are a true entrepreneur startup person, you understand change is happening all the time, and you've got to be super flexible. Like, for example, hey, we're going to do an Instagram. Wait a minute. This is not the time for us to do that. Stop, regroup. Doesn't matter if that didn't work. We're just moving forward. So our sort of entrepreneurial mindset and ability to just kind of roll with the punches, but keep that North Star, that's probably honestly the biggest tool we use. Yes, we are on, Discord and Telegram and Twitter and WhatsApp, and we use all those communication tools. We have different software packages and all those things that we use, but those are just tools. And if you don't have the right attitude that you're bringing to it every day, doesn't matter what tools you have. Like, no Notion account is going to make your business sing.
Yes.
Right? It could be in a Google Doc for all I care, right? It's all about the execution and having the stamina to push forward in emerging industries day after day after day. That's the real tool, to be honest.
Yeah. And I guess that leads to the last question, is what is your why? Why are you waking up every day working on this and so passionately?
It's a great question. And we think about like how we grew up. We grew up where, just say no, drugs are bad, cannabis is a gateway drug, all this stigma, all these things, right? And now we're looking at this world and we're saying, A, none of that is true. And B, there's a massive opportunity here, right? And so we're driven by like, hey, if you want to know the truth about this, there is an amazing opportunity for you as a person to live better, be better, feel better, right? You don't, and I'm talking about, you could just use CBD. Like, not everybody has to use THC or any of it, right? But just think about this plant in a different way. And then on the business side, we're driven by these emerging opportunities, right? Like, when I got out of business school in 1995 and was at AOL and then went to Etsy when it was 50 people, and people were like, an online flea market? Are you kidding me? This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Now, it's like a massive company, publicly traded. During the pandemic, everyone was like, oh my gosh, Etsy, they're not out. They don't have a supply chain issue, right? So for me, the why is twofold. It's one is like, people need to understand that their perceptions, they've been told things that are not true, right? Yeah. let's change that. And while we're doing that, this is a really exciting new industry that can, raise a lot of boats, including our boat, right? So for me, it's that twofold, the business challenge and sort of the learn the truth. Don't be fooled by a bunch of lobbyists telling you something or what have you, right? Dig in and at the end of the day, it's going to be good for you.
Yes. I remember when I really got in this industry and started doing the real work of understanding, why was it prohibited? Oh, wait. Oh, that's why. And really understanding kind of the economic reasons that it was prohibited in the United States. It's a game changer. And then I think anyone that's just getting into the industry has to understand how we even came to where we are today too. So I love that. I think it's definitely changing how we view that for people who've never understood it. How do you view things and questioning a lot of stuff? So exactly. I love that. Anything else you want to share before we hop off?
I just love to share how to find us and encourage people to sign up for the newsletter, find us on Twitter, etc. So we are Thrice, THRIC, and the number 3 for a little nod to Web3.io is our website. We also have a link tree that's at Thrice at Thrice also. So people can find all of our links there. We are Thrice Official on Twitter. And when we go back onto Instagram, we will also be Thrice there as well. So, I encourage people to reach out and, learn something new, share it with a friend. That's really what we ask is if you enjoy something you've learned or you thought, that's really interesting. And I have a friend who could probably use that information, pass it along. I think for us, the best thing is more people consuming the content and becoming knowledgeable and ultimately, creating better conversations about cannabis and living a better life.
Amen to that. Thank you so much, Liz, for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's show. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed this, leave us a 5-star review. Make sure that you share this episode on your social media and tag us in the Instagram stories. You can find us wherever you go on social media. Just look up Cannabis Business Minds. Have an idea for the show or something that you want to talk about? Shoot us an email at podcast@cannabisbusinessminds.com.